So what are the advantages of having assessment systems?
Well, it's an interesting question because it's a significant paradox. On the one hand, systems really drive markets because folks feel as if they've accomplished something. But the opposite side of that is that systems can force us to focus on fragments when we should be looking at the whole. So in other words, there's a paradox in needing to understand the whole in order for us to really see that nature is one organism, in essence, and we're a part of that organism. What we tend to want to do, however, is reduce that whole into identifiable fragments. Now, in my opinion, you can't understand the whole unless you look at the fragments. But if you get stuck in the fragments, you'll never see the whole. So rating systems often ask us to focus on just the pieces and don't notice or search for the interrelationships between those pieces. So, for example, we may be thinking about water as an issue, and think of that totally separate from energy. But there's a huge connection between water and energy. For example, why do we have to clean our water? Well, largely because we're burning fossil fuels that create emittents and pollutants in the air that now add to that water that, oh, wait a minute, we don't have to worry about habitat. Habitat has nothing to do with energy. Well, wait a minute. If we didn't have healthy plant life with good carbon material in the root structure that actually takes the contaminants in that water that got put there by the energy in the first place, then we don't have any clean water. So this species has survived for thousands of years with no more energy than that provided by the sun. Yet none of us can live more than about 3 or 4 days without potable water. So in essence, we are fundamentally dependent upon healthy habitat and plant life for our survival. And we usually put that low on the list in a rating system.
And how does LEED fit into this paradox?
LEED, like most rating systems, attempts to identify the pieces. And it's up to the user to discover the interrelationships. What's, I think, valuable about LEED is that it attempts to identify where those interrelationships are. More on that later. In essence, LEED says buildings impact the environment in 5 key ways: site, water, energy, materials, indoor environmental quality. And there are criteria under each of those categories, each of which identifies a specific issue. So for sites, for example, probably the biggest issues are those associated with transportation to and from that building. Water, big issues mostly around the consumption of plumbing fixtures in a building of potable water. Energy, probably the biggest one in energy is not so much the energy itself, but a process that in the US we call commissioning, which in Denmark is a slightly more formalized and elaborated quality assurance process. Because if you're going to design a high-performance building that consumes, in your mind, much less energy, if you don't commission it to ensure that all of the fragments or pieces or components or elements in mechanical, electrical, plumbing, lighting systems, and even the pink color on the wall, if they're not functioning properly, well, you probably won't succeed. So commissioning is a process to ensure that that happens. Materials right now, LEED is not LCA based, although all of the credits are in essence proxies of LEED, or I'm sorry, of LCA issues. And indoor environmental quality, what we found is that the biggest impacts economically of green buildings are how well the people in them function. And that's where actually the real money is. And the studies that have been done thus far, although it's a little early, but the early studies indicate increases in productivity of occupants of green buildings anywhere from 2 to 16%. And what's really interesting is if you start to look at the data, about 2/3 of 1% increase in productivity will pay your energy bill for the year. That's the real issue. So if we can start to look at better daylight, access to views, higher levels of ventilation, fewer contaminants in the air, acoustical issues, better thermal comfort and better control over that thermal comfort individually, and lighting, it's highly likely that the humans in the space afforded with those things will perform better, be happier and healthier. So that's a triple bottom line win. You now have less impacts on the environment, economically far more feasible, and humans are healthier.